President Biden won the election in November with the support of the upper Midwest, including Wisconsin and Michigan, in part by pledging economic policies that would benefit manufacturing workers in those states. Later today, he travels back to Milwaukee for a CNN town hall meeting. For a preview, we welcome now Kip Eideberg of the Association of Equipment Manufacturers, where he is Senior Vice President of Government and Industry Relations. So, Kip, welcome back. So he's going to come up to visit you in Milwaukee, as I understand it. What are you expecting?
Well, first of all, thanks for having me back, David. And I got to tell you, we are excited that President Biden is visiting our hometown. And we are pleased with his initial focus on revitalizing American manufacturing, investing in our infrastructure, and promoting Buy American. And I got to tell you, no one supports Buy American more than equipment manufacturers, David. But the focus tonight, hopefully during this town hall, will be on policies that help sell American. Sell American, increase our global competitiveness, and allow us to build more equipment and create more family-sustaining jobs here in America.
So I think, Kip, that the president right at the moment is focused a lot on the stimulus bill, that $1.9 trillion bill. Is that going to help sell America?
I think so. And look, equipment manufacturers have been working through the COVID crisis. What we need now, obviously, we need some relief, we need some recovery. But more than anything else, we need to crush this virus, we need to get a handle on the pandemic, and we need to put Americans back to work and open up the economy. That is what we need more than anything else. But if we're talking about stimulus, we think infrastructure is the way to go. Yeah,
but the president, I think, has been pretty clear. That's next, right? That's going to be the Build Back Better, which comes after this first one. Talk to me about your members, how they're affected by the pandemic, and how much of it is in their own workforce. Have they really had to cut back in what they can manufacture? Or how much of it is on the demand side, that people aren't buying as much?
Well, right now, and as I mentioned, equipment manufacturers have been working through the COVID crisis. Right now, for us, we're starting to turn the corner here. And it's not so much about specific support anymore. It is more about getting the economy back up and running so that we can create some confidence overall. And you mentioned infrastructure. Obviously, the president has said that he's going to go big on Build Back Better. But we believe that there's an opportunity in the relief and the recovery. We've talked about this before, David. Over 700 cities have had to halt critical infrastructure projects because of the economic downturn. The federal government is the only one who can help get these projects back up and running. And so the next relief or recovery package should include funding for those infrastructure projects. That's how you give our industry a boost.
So the state and local support component of this that the Democrats have included, we'll see if it remains there, is important for you because it actually could get you to some infrastructure.
Absolutely, assuming, though, that money actually goes to infrastructure projects and it goes to those all those projects that have been put on hold as a result of the pandemic. If it goes to something else that's state and local, it helps us less. So we really hope that it's targeted to getting those infrastructure projects back up and running again. That will give us a short-term boost, no doubt.
Does the $15 minimum wage give you pause at all? Your members pause, I should say.
That's a good question. And look, there are a lot of legislative proposals out there, and there's going to be a lot of political horse trading in the coming months. I can tell you this. Right now, our industry is creating more jobs than we can fill. And a job in our industry pays 35% above the national average. So for us, it's not so much about the minimum wage. It is more about how can we fill all these great jobs that are out there. So I hope that the president tonight in Milwaukee will talk about how can we reskill and upskill our workforce to meet the jobs of the 21st century. That's what our members want to hear, more so than a minimum wage.
Well, give us a sense of that specifically, Kip, about the gap, if there is a gap, between the people available and the skill level or the training that they have. What sorts of skills do they need? What sorts of training do your members find it most effective to give?
Well, first and foremost, we need training that actually mirrors the jobs that are available. And so what do I mean by that? Well, obviously, there are lots of different jobs in the equipment manufacturing industry, and I don't want your listeners to think that we still don't need welders and machinists and fabricators and painters. We do. But more and more, our industry is one that is increasingly tech-forward, sophisticated. So we need engineers. We need programmers. We need people who are trained in operating autonomous vehicles, on using, AI on the shop floor. And that's where we're seeing, a lot of the gap right now. But also in some of those more traditional, I guess you'd call them, manufacturing jobs. There are member companies out there who cannot find enough welders, for example. So I think what we got to do, and I think there's an opportunity for the president here, is to encourage more young men and women to explore careers in manufacturing. It is the pathway to the middle class from our perspective.
Yeah, and if you give them a career path, they're more likely to stick with it. If they see that there's a pot of gold at the end of that rainbow, they're more likely to stay with it. I've talked to some businessmen, particularly smaller businessmen, local businessmen, who are concerned that we put too much emphasis on four-year liberal arts education. And in fact, there are a lot of things that can be done short of that, training for specific jobs that are out there and need and want people who are skilled for them.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. And look, as I mentioned, a job in our industry pays 35% above the national average. You can have a very, very good career in equipment manufacturing. You could provide for a family, you can put your kids through school, you can retire comfortably. And so I think we've got to change this mindset among Americans, particularly the young ones, that, the only path forward is a four-year liberal arts degree. We believe that, the pathway to the middle class, as I said, lies through manufacturing. So we need to get more young people interested in those types of career opportunities. And we have a role to play in that, but so do parents, teachers, guidance counselors, the broader business community.
So, Kip, it's clear you're enthusiastic about President Biden coming out to your hometown of Milwaukee here, and you're expecting some good things to come from him. Is there anything that gives you pause? Are you nervous about anything that he might go the wrong way from your point of view on?
That's a great question, David. I think it's not so much what we are worried about what the president might say or do, but rather what he might not say or not do. We have a lot of challenges facing our country right now. We need to rebuild our infrastructure. We talked about that. We need to put Americans back to work, jumpstart our economy. So inaction is not an option. And so what we want the president to say tonight is that he's willing to work with Democrats and Republicans in Congress, put country over party, policies ahead of politics, work together to advance common sense, bipartisan solutions to our most pressing problems. That's our biggest concern, is that we'll stall here after the first 100 days and we'll be back to gridlock.
Well, out there in Milwaukee and through the upper Midwest, do you have a sense whether people are willing to, forgive the expression, bury the hatchet? Because there's a lot of bad feelings that have gone back and forth politically in this country.
Well, I think there are no doubt, whether it's the upper Midwest or I think, around the country. But I can tell you the one thing that equipment manufacturers are focused on is not the past, it's the future. So from our member companies' perspective and from the men and women of our industry, whether it's the 187,000 of them in Wisconsin or 2.8 million across the country, they're looking for progress. They're looking for action. They're looking for our lawmakers to set aside their differences, work together for the greater good of the country. So to answer your question, I think so. But, we also need to see some action and some progress from Washington. And, lack of progress means that people tend to revert back to sort of, political mudslinging and sloganeering, right? So I think the best way for Washington to avoid that is they got to work together, David.
Yeah. I'll give you a softball. You're worried about over-regulation, just quickly?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that was a softball.
I know it's a softball.
Regulation in general?
Yeah.
Yeah, look, I mean, there's a role for regulation, but we need smart and transparent regulation, right? So we have some predictability. So we're not against it. Have a good time.
Have a good time with the president. Kip Eiderberg of the Association of Equipment Manufacturers, and this is Bloomberg.